mode. So will our speaker please come in here? Unmute yourself.
Good evening. My name is Oliver, K6OLI, and I'm the District Emergency Coordinator for Aries LAX Northeast District. I'm, relatively speaking, a recent ham. I know quite a few of you probably have been hams longer than I've been alive, but you know, just it's been a fantastic journey so far. And you know, we're really, really excited about, you know, being here tonight. And I do say we a lot because please understand, this is never a one-man or one-woman show. Everything we do in amateur radio and especially in emergency communications is always a group effort. So tonight with us is also Jeff, W2JCL, and Tom, KN6BKT, and they're part of our team here at Aries LAX Northeast. And you know, if you have any questions, they'll be more than happy to answer those as well. But thank you so much for being here.
Get out. Get out of my room, Mom.
Actually, you keep unmuting yourself. Please keep yourself muted.
Sorry.
All right, shall I share my screen then? All right. So without a whole lot of ado, Dan, shall I start with the presentation?
Yes, go right ahead.
Okay, can you see my screen?
I can.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And you may notice at the bottom, there is closed captioning, and we'll most definitely will work with that. So please, if you have any questions, you can put those in the chat or we can answer them later. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. And with that, let's start. First off, I would like to thank Dan Marler, K7REX, the Idaho section manager, for inviting us and giving this presentation. I would like to thank Diana Feinberg, AI60F, who is the Los Angeles section manager, and it's a lot of fun. And she gives us all the support that we want and need to get everything that we're talking about tonight done. And of course, Joe Speroni, AH0A, the Pacific section manager, who's been an inspiration and a great person to work with, and he's been one of our staunchest supporters and greatest friends. So thank you so much for having us.
Well, you're quite welcome. I was just trying to see if Joe made it in. I don't see him in there right now.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I told you just now is Aries LAX, like all emergency communications groups, are team-based groups. And so one of the things that we are doing is we go out a lot, we practice what we preach. So everything we're talking about tonight comes from hard-won experience. So please understand that this is not just theoretical for us. A little bit of background on Aries LAX, the section, and this won't be too long. Let's start with this. And I hope you can hear this.
There is no audio.
Okay. All right, well, what this is essentially, this was an alert that we would expect during a 7.8 magnitude earthquake and along the San Andreas Fault. It would only give us a couple of minutes to actually, a couple of seconds, as you can see, to actually react. And the truth of the matter is, at that point, our world as we know it would come to an end. As we talked about a little bit beforehand, before the meeting, the pandemic going on right now, and our level in California is about a 3. Fires, I guess, would be a 5 to 7, depending on where you are. And of course, we do have another whole set of problems once an earthquake hits, because at that point we don't have electricity. We probably won't have any water. We will have a lot of fire. So everything we're going to talk about right now is with that in mind. So please keep that in mind as we go through the list and the presentation. Oops, let me just change this over here. All right. Aries LAX is a unique item, a unique beast in this ARRL setup. It's the only section that is a single county, and there are about 10 million people living in the greater LA area. 11 to 12 is the estimate, the realistic estimate of people, but 10 million according to the last census.
Mom, why
And
naked?
we are straddling actually 2 continental plates, and that creates a very interesting topographic issue. On the one hand, we have oceans. On the other hand, we have very tall mountains. We have desert climate. We have kind of a Mediterranean climate. We have microclimates, everything from fog, rain. So we have a whole group of challenges right there. The Aries LAX section is divided into 4 districts. There is the South District, which covers the Long Beach, Torrance area all the way to downtown Los Angeles. Then there is the Northwest District, which covers mainly the San Fernando Valley, Santa Clarita, all the way to Malibu. Then we have the High Desert District, which has the fewest number of hospitals, but is a very large, physically large district located in the northern side and across the mountains, so that creates its own challenges. And then, of course, there is the Northeast District, which comprises around 22 cities, and we have a very diverse group, and also in terms of organizational challenges, we are facing quite a lot of interesting challenges that are fun to address. Overall, there are 70 911 receiving hospitals in LA County, 13 of which are disaster resource centers. And disaster resource centers, I'll explain in a moment why that is relevant. Please understand that the mission of Aries LAX is to support hospitals and the Medical Alert Center, which is the nerve center for patient transports and allocation, as well as during disasters, a hub where hospitals can request resources. So we provide the backup communications for this. Our goal is to connect the hospitals to the MAC and connect the hospitals with one another. And the simple fact of life there is that this is also part of the official Department of Health Services LA County reference or policy 1132. So you can look that up. In terms of our disaster timeline, again, earthquakes feature very prominently, so I use this one from OSHA. That's the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. From the event, the first item is always self-rescue. We strongly support that everybody look after their family and their neighborhoods first before they activate with Aries LAX. From then on, we are expected, and that's in our discussions with the MAC and the EMS services, to provide up to 48 hours to 72 hours of communication support until the national level response has activated. So those are our goals, and we are quite aware that we are the pointed tip of the spear. Our goal is to set up a VHF, UHF station in under 15 minutes. Most of us can do this with digital in under 10. And then when there are lulls, we can add functionality like mesh, like HF, as the mission progresses. But this is what we're working towards. Aries LAX Northeast District. This is our little corner of the world. We support 20 hospitals in our district, plus the Medical Alert Center. I drew in the medical alert center here at the bottom in red. And again, this is the nerve center, not just for the 20 hospitals in our district, but all the 70 hospitals in LA County. And again, these are just the 911 receiving hospitals. There are about 5,000 extended care facilities, clinics, and so on, in addition to that, dialysis centers that the MAC is supposed to support. Right now, there just aren't enough hands to do this. We're lucky that we can cover most of the hospitals that are working with us, but it is an ongoing, recruitment is an ongoing process, and we're, I think, doing a really good job with that. A couple of useful terms. You'll hear me refer to these as we go along. The MAC is a medical alert center, and it coordinates patient transport on a day-to-day basis, and during disasters, it provides resources and coordination. Those are really, really important features, especially when you're trying to figure out, can we send patients to a hospital? Does a hospital need additional support? 13 of the 70 hospitals are designated as DRCs. That's a disaster resource center. And they have caches with additional supplies available for local surges. And I show you what part of one of these lists look like. But the idea there is, it's a large county. If you have a couple of these hospitals already with extra equipment, you can have a much faster response on a local level. And finally, Winlink. The simple thing about, I'm pretty sure everybody is familiar with Winlink in this group, but essentially the way to think about it's email over radio. The nice thing about it is it works on HF, VHF, UHF, and SHF, so mesh, essentially, that's the way we use it, and the internet, which means it gives us a single platform to actually send digital traffic, both internally, ham to ham, as well as externally. The question, of course, all of you are asking, and we are asking ourselves, is how will we communicate mission critical traffic for our served agencies? That's always at the foremost of our mind. And the answer might surprise you. We have found that the tactical communications are still best handled on voice, whereas all the logistical communications are ideally handled on digital. So our approach has been very successful, but it's also worked really well because we're combining voice and digital. In our mind and our experience, amateur radio already has a great number of excellent operating procedures. And if you can combine that using digital traffic, you can actually increase the speed dramatically. And why does that matter? Because the key challenges for all emergency communications, whether they're amateur or professional, today are accuracy, always number one, and circuit capacity. We live in a digital world. Our served agencies expect us to be able to send traffic digitally, because there is a time limit and a lot of disasters are time sensitive. For those of you in Northern California, the Paradise fires actually overran a lot of the infrastructure early on. So there was not a whole lot you could do about this, but understand it was one of those mega fires that really picked up speed very quickly. So one of the things that we have to be mindful of is, if part of our capacity gets limited, we need to do better with the frequencies we have left or the circuits that we have left. And again, accuracy, our goal is to have messages sent and received at 100%. And we'll get into that in a little bit about what our experience there was trying different approaches. What kind of traffic do we move at Aries LAX? And again, this is actual traffic, hospital status assessments. Hospital status assessments, and there are two ways of looking at this. There's the medical alert center view, what they need in order to dispatch patients and hand out resources or retrieve resources. And then there's a hospital view of the world. And they're not 100% overlapping. The MAC essentially wants a hospital status assessment. That's key. Before anything else can happen, it's a hospital service level, which in our case is a color code, which tells the MAC, are we having normal operations, limited operations, or is the hospital offline? Plus a bed availability report. What beds are available in which departments? Can we send certain patients to that hospital? Do we need to divert them to another hospital? Before anything else can happen, that HSA must be sent, and it must be received in a timely fashion. Nothing else will happen until that HSA has been sent and received. So please keep in mind, with 70+ hospitals, they all have to send this. And right now we're going through a pandemic, as most of you are aware. This is something that the MAC sends on a day-to-day. Now they're getting hourly updates from all these hospitals because beds are filling up and being released on a constant basis. During a mass casualty event like earthquake, you would literally expect these surges of 5,000-6,000 people in 3-4 days per hospital. So knowing where you can send people, where you cannot send them is extremely critical. Next for the MAC are resource requests. Resource requests are exactly what they say. Hospitals reach out to the MAC and say, okay, we need these resources to keep the lights on. We need these resources to handle our patient load. We need these resources. And the MAC may then reach out to its suppliers, or on a national level reach out to either state, national resources, and make sure that those resources are available. They tend to be more involved. I'll show you examples of that. And finally, the disaster resource center forms. So the way a disaster resource center operates is a hospital says, okay, I need to reach out to our disaster resource center, the local hospital that has those extra caches for, let's say, N95 masks. And then the disaster resource center contacts the MAC and says, is it okay for us to release these resources? And if the answer is positive, then the DRC releases the resources to the local hospital. That cuts down on the delivery times and so on dramatically. And so they're very valuable for the Los Angeles County preparedness cycle. From the hospital point of view, of course, the HSA is the most important form that needs to go out before anything else can happen. Resource requests, that's how the hospital requests resources from the MAC, but it doesn't necessarily have to be from the MAC. It could also be from its own suppliers. It could request resources from local pharmacies, from its own chain of hospitals that it's part of, a group of hospitals, from our corporate headquarters. That's all possible. The other thing that hospitals send a lot of are hospital incident command system forms, which very often are used between the hospitals when they're making allocations on a local level, or between a hospital and its associated clinics. So being able to send those forms relatively quickly and easily has been a big boon for us. And finally, incident command system forms that you're all familiar with. Those always come into play depending on whether you now are communicating with your local law enforcement or your local city or other county resources that you may have a relationship with as a hospital. So keep that in mind. This is the typical traffic that we do send on a regular basis. Here's an example of what the hospital status assessment looks like. Essentially, it's a color code on the top here. And by the way, this isn't a real hospital. I just made this up for illustration purposes. We tend to not use actual hospital names for our amateur radio exercises. We use the actual hospital names for the statewide medical health exercise in November, or when it's a proper hospital exercise activation. So orange, modified service, that tells you already the hospital isn't in a green or yellow level. It's already dealing with some shortages. And here you can see on the left, you got medical, surgical, telemetry, adult ICU, pediatric ICU, all the way to how many operating rooms are available, how many ventilators are available. And for those of you following the news, ventilators are a big topic right now. And of course, is there a mass decontamination facility available? It has to be properly signed by a hospital or authorized by a hospital official. And the other thing is the MAC, even though there may not be phone communications, always wants a phone number attached to that person. And in this case, this form actually is coming out of Winlink. So this is the official form that, thanks to our friends in Sacramento Valley, Aries, Greg, and the Winlink development team, we were able to add to Winlink. So this is the official form, the way you can get it from the website. And this is something that is usually sent via ReadyNet. ReadyNet is a software package that the county uses to run the day-to-day operation for the hospitals and the medical alert center. Now, ReadyNet is a great software. However, when you have a surge and 70 hospitals are trying to use it at the same time, it has had a tendency to become overloaded. And I remember my first statewide medical health exercise, I thought, great, I'll be coffee and donuts all day. We'll see how the professionals do it. Within about an hour, we were furiously scribbling away because we didn't have the Winlink capabilities at the time, scribbling away and taking traffic. So that surprised me a great deal. And like many other people, I thought there has got to be a better way. This is what a resource request looks like. This is an official LA County form again. And one of the things that we did for quite a while is that we actually used spreadsheets, because one of the MAC officials suggested, he says, all our resource requests start as spreadsheets. If you can send the spreadsheets, we're golden. And for those of you who've ever sent a spreadsheet on the air, on HF, VHF, UHF, a 50 kilobyte file is a challenge all across the board. So we worked really hard to come up with solutions. One of them was using comma-separated values, and that worked really well. And during the last statewide medical health exercise, they actually accepted our comma-separated value files that we sent and entered all that information. And a lot of the voice traffic, they actually didn't accept it because it was incomplete. So there's a big advantage to using forms. It helps you stay on track. And a big shout out and thanks to Greg, KG6SJT, and Mike, N6KZB, who have been absolutely phenomenal in helping us develop these forms for Winlink and making them available. Why are these forms, especially the resource requests, so important? Very simple. My day job's in finance. I don't deal with medical items at all on a day-to-day basis. If I have to say diphtheria, tetanus, toxoid, and I don't know, many of you will probably have a medical background, but I don't, or was it doxycycline capsules? I probably will butcher that on the radio, which means then I have to spell it out. Delta, Oscar, X-ray, Yankee, and I'm sparing you the rest. But that takes the entire system and grinds it to a halt on voice. I can take the same message now and send it, in fact, have the hospital fill it out for me, or give me a thumb drive with information I can just copy and paste it so they know they're getting exactly what they want. Now I can send this list in under a minute to whoever is receiving it. Well, since I'm usually at the Mac, I'd be the person receiving it. But the point here is whoever is sending the data can do that very quickly. If they have a much longer list, let's say they need crash cards refilled, and they're up between 200 and 300 items, they can just do that as an attachment. Makes it very, very easy to do that. But again, I wouldn't want to actually spell this out. And for those of you who are paying close attention, epinephrine injection there is 1/1,000 and in 1 milligram per milliliter ampules, and 1/10,000, right? Does it make a difference to you as an amateur radio operator? Probably not. To you as a patient? Definitely. It does make a huge difference. And again, spelling things like syringes and whatnot, we can actually move that traffic a lot faster if we do this digitally. Here's an example of a DRC form. This is the medical and surgical cache inventory, and I actually showcased this during a recent presentation to a hospital DRC, to a DRC EOC meeting. And that was before we all went into safer at home status. And when I mentioned the words N95 masks, people started paying very close attention. And if you look at this, this is a DRC that has another 6 hospitals attached to it. The grand total, and I think I did the calculation, comes out to 3,780 N95 masks they had in addition to their regular items. And we're talking about millions of masks now on a daily basis. So keep that in mind, please, as we go through this. By the way, the DRC medical and surgical cache in its entirety is 6 pages. And for those of you who have Winlink, you can look this up for yourself and actually take a look at these very forms. They're under the California state forms, LA County forms, and they're all listed there. And we do encourage you to try them out, even in your own sections, and play with them and send them and just see how they work. And because we do that with other section documents as well. And this is how we learn what works for us. Are there any questions at this point? Okay, let's go on. So we tested quite a lot of things, and I do want to say we only use what works and what we can prove in the field. Personally, I'm not a fan of Would Do Dojo. There's this wonderful skit by Monty Python, a British comedy troupe, about what to do when somebody attacks you with a banana. And that may be valid. Maybe there is a 1 in a billion chance of that happening, but it's very, very unlikely. So what we need are robust solutions that work on a regular basis. And that also work on simplex. Keep in mind, before we proceed here, that I, as well as our group, firmly believe that the true power of amateur radio is simplex. We use repeaters, we like gateways, all of that great technology available, but when everything is down, we cannot have the repeater fallacy. That somehow we believe that our repeaters will stay alive when Verizon, AT&T, hardened sites from our served agencies have gone down. Our basic assumption must be that all infrastructure fails, and then we can build on top of that. Anything else is deluding ourselves into a false sense of safety. And just to give you an example, out of no reason whatsoever, recently we had a very key site in LA County where the HF antenna broke off and fell down on that repeater site and took out the VHF, UHF, mesh, and everything else that was on there. And it took about 3 months to get enough of a team together that all had the skills to actually put this back together the way it was supposed to be. So keep that in mind. In winter, there are a lot of our hills, they're really tall, that are snowed in. Very unlikely that we'll be able to go up there and fix anything. So everything we do needs to work on simplex. If we get to use repeaters, that's a bonus. If we get to use HF gateways that we can reach, that's a bonus. And our solution has been Winlink for digital. And yes, I know you're asking, have you tried N-beams? And the answer is yes. In fact, we're alternating between N-beams and Winlink, but for hospital traffic, we use Winlink because Winlink has a tendency to go 100% or not at all. It's that all or nothing traffic handling. During one of our FLDG nets, we did run into an issue where there were lines missing, and net control noticed that and had the originating station reread those lines that net control thought were missing. And as a result, there was almost a riot on the net because people realized different parts of that message were missing in spite of the fact that we all thought we had received it. The forward error correction was fine, the checksum was fine, but these were critical data. This was actually a medication list. So part of the reason why we believe Winlink is great is either it goes, and when it goes, it's 100%, or it doesn't go at all, and then you can find a different path. Maybe a relay, maybe another station can pass it on, forwarding without change. Those are all options. It also works with HF, VHF, UHF, and of course on mesh. So it gives us a single platform. It works with the internet, and if you're running a gateway and there's no internet, it works without the internet as well. You can have a gateway infrastructure, or you can use peer-to-peer. Every Thursday night at 2100 hours, we do have a peer-to-peer net on VHF, and we try everything that we think might work. And there are different philosophies about that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. The other nice thing is we've got multiple robust modes available, just like NBeams. There's VARA for HF, there's VARA FM, there's Packet, which has been around since the 70s. There's Winmore and RDOP, which are great modes. And of course, there are Pactor hardware modems made by SCS. So quite a lot of options you have there. And this is a big plus with our served agencies, especially the hospitals, you can contact non-ham emails if you actually needed to. And sometimes that's a great feature to have. Gateway operation, essentially gateway is a post office. Again, I'm assuming most of you are familiar with Winlink, but just think about it this way. K6YZF11 in this case is a gateway, and it's a post office, and all the other stations can connect to it. So if KM6KQ has a message for AI6ME or the MAC, they can deposit that message on that gateway, and of course, then the MAC or AI6ME can come and pick that up whenever they have the time or whenever there's a clear frequency. So that's very, very effective. And those gateways can operate on VHF, UHF. You can have an Arden mesh connection on those gateways. You can have an HF connection because the origins of this are all in HF. And you can have an internet connection, so it can go out over the internet and propagate that way. Of course, if you have the internet available, that's a wonderful thing. You can send it through there. But if you don't have the internet available and you say have a VHF gateway, you can still have that information locally. All the local stations can pick it up. If you have an HF component to it, you can actually forward the information via HF. There's a network of HF gateways that actually connect throughout the United States and can pass this kind of information. Just keep in mind, you always want to fit your message sizes to which pathway you think you can send it on. So VARA FM, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Don't want to give too much away. And here's an example of peer-to-peer operation. Of course, KM6KQ can send directly to AI6ME, and he can send directly, if he has line of sight, on VHF to K6YZF. But what if, let's say, KM6KQ wanted to send something to K6OLI and they're separated by mountains? Well, he could send it to W2JCL, who then passes it on to KM6NAO, who has a direct line of sight, or more or less a connection to K6OLI. So that works really well for VHF, UHF. Of course, on HF, you can use technologies like NVIS, or ways of operating like near vertical incident skywave, and get around the mountains that way. Our Tyrolean friends in both the northern part of Italy and southern part of Austria have been very successful at connecting different valleys using NVIS. Funny enough, with an antenna design developed right here in Camarillo. So it's one of those wonderful things about learning how the international community comes together. So let's meet Mike, KM6KQ. In 2018, and this is a practical application right there, Mike was actually asked during the statewide medical health exercise to send a HICS 254, Hospital Incident Command System 254 patient tracking form. And for us, that was the first time we actually had experienced somebody sending that form. But obviously, HIPAA is an issue there. So Mike informed the emergency manager that all amateur radio traffic is unencrypted. And the emergency manager said, yes, I know that's the case, but part of our plan is understanding whether you can send this traffic. The names were made up. They used a name generator, which are available on the internet. So I think Donald Duck was one of the patients they tried to send there. And Mike proceeded and he sent the 10 patient lists, some of them with really complicated names because it was a computer generated naming system, in under a minute using Winlink Packet. So that was that. When we took that traffic, we were really pleasantly surprised. And he did that with relatively simple equipment, a D710 Kenwood, and a SignalLink in this case. He also was able to use the TNC in there, but that time around he used the SignalLink. in 2019, during the statewide medical health exercise, the LA area hospitals using Winlink actually passed 100% of their traffic. So let that just sink in for a moment, in large part because our voice circuits, first ReadyNet became overloaded, the software that the Mac uses to communicate with the hospitals. And next, the voice channels became stressed because we were running a limited number of voice channels. And again, once we started introducing resource requests and these long terms started having to be spelled out, that slowed down traffic dramatically. Those hospitals, they were all located in the Northeast district, that were using Winlink actually just switched over and actually told us out here that they're switching over to Winlink, and they passed all their traffic digitally without any hiccups. One of the things that we do believe in is to have a voice net control even when we're running gateways. And on VHF, UHF, that's not a challenge at all. So we can actually tell people when it's their time to go. That increases efficiency dramatically. And Winlink remained operational. Both our gateways remained operational at the time. We had spare gateways with us, portable gateways. And of course, we could have always switched to peer-to-peer traffic. So that would have worked as well. So let's get technical for a moment. We train the way we fight. And that's true for Aries LAX Northeast. It's true for Aries LAX. It's true for everybody involved in emergency communications. The more we train, the more we learn. And I'm a big believer in not making things too easy. So I'm a big fan of giving people reach goals. Failure is not only an option, it's a must-have. Unless we push our systems to the brink of failure, we don't know what our parameter space is. We don't understand what we can and cannot do. During the actual event is not the time for us to start training. We have to be trained before. We have to push the boundaries before, so when it comes time to actually do this for real, and I'm telling you right now, I hope I never have to do any of this for a major earthquake. But when it comes time to actually do this and lives depend on it, we need to know what it is we're doing and not fumble around. So one of the things we do a lot, we train a lot. We have digital nets and exercises. Let's go through that. We have 5 simplex digital nets per month. Every first Sunday, we have a training session on Zoom. We've done that for about 2 years, followed by a peer-to-peer net so people can try out what they've learned. And that's kind of our basics course. And then every Thursday night at 9 p.m., 2100 hours Pacific time, we actually have a peer-to-peer net where we push the envelope, we do N-beams, we do Winlink, and anything else that we want to try out. Lately, now our next one will actually introduce ARES and Winlink at the same time, so we're looking forward to that. We're using Winlink peer-to-peer and portable gateway nets. Absolutely no reason not to use a gateway if you have it. N-beams, we have 4 Winlink digital exercises per month. And Jeff, who's on the net tonight, and if you have any questions about that, and I'm sure he'll also add you to that list if you want to learn more. Jeff, W2JCL, puts these exercises out. They're actual exercises. Some of them are designed to help you explore the capabilities of Winlink. Others are designed for actual traffic we expect people to send during emergencies. And they're a whole lot of fun. I always learn something. And they're designed so you can answer them any which way you want to. You can do it via internet if you're not comfortable with RF. You can use a local gateway, VHF, UHF. You can do it on HF. If you have one of those Iridium devices, try it via satellite and see how fast 1.2 kilobytes per minute actually is. And we have 4 fifth Saturday exercises per year, which is where we actually grab our gear and we set up in the park. One of the things that we have learned over time is it's very easy in our cozy places to actually operate. But what happens when you actually have to evacuate quickly and set up in a place you're not familiar. Do you have everything? One of our operators set up at the park and, you know, everything was there and, you know, just bit by bit by bit, and was ready to turn on the radio. And the colleague sitting right next, the operator right next said, oh, before you start transmitting, how is your radio connected to your antenna? Is that via RF? And it turned out the coax was still under the bed at home. It was a very important lesson learned there and a mistake nobody's going to repeat. But these things happen. Working on Go kits, working on deployments is a constant effort. And this is what these are. They're always great fun. We try mesh in the park. We try VHF. We've had an HF exercise in the Angeles National Forest, which was absolutely beautiful. Plus, you get another 4,000 feet of elevation. That makes for good signals. And we support 3 to 4 events every year. The statewide medical health exercise, of course, is the big one where we activate the hospitals. And of course, we do things like the Angeles Crest 100 relay race, Baker to Vegas Relay Cup, which is a law enforcement relay race, which is a lot of fun. We actually work in the desert for that between Baker in California and Las Vegas in Nevada. And of course, local events like the Ronald McDonald Walk for Kids. So all in all, we have 115 digital exercises per year. So how do we run effective and efficient digital exercise nets? We like voice net control that directs digital traffic on the same frequency. That has been a game changer. The fact that we take voice check-ins and then stations check-in digitally changes everything, because now if a station has traffic, they call net control. Net control says, send your traffic. Do you want to use VARA or packet? And they choose what they want to use. And we switch pretty quickly between those two. Works great on VHF, UHF, but regulations currently prohibit this on HF. And I think that's too bad, because if we could do this on HF, that would be the killer app. Because then there would be no stopping. Distance is not an issue for that anymore. We value operational flexibility. The core of all of this is the operator. The operator is in charge. She decides what the best path is for the situation and makes those decisions in coordination with the team. The bread and butter, all disasters start on a local level, whether you like it or not. They all start locally. We first look after our own families, after our neighborhoods, and then the local resources deploy in the first 24 hours. That's the reality of it. And it'll take a while until the neighboring communities are able to help, till the state comes in and helps, until on a national level, the help comes. So most of it in the initial phase will be on VHF, UHF, maybe on mesh, and, you know, depending on where you are, some states in the Midwest, I lived in Minnesota for 2 years, HF to cover those longer distances. North Dakota, I can imagine that HF is very valuable to cover these extremely long distances. They're very large states. But keep in mind, there's a trade-off always for all of this. Mesh is wonderful because you have high bandwidth, but the distances are realistically between 10 and 20 miles. You can use Winlink on mesh, not a problem, and voice over IP, although we have found that it's actually easier to use 2-meter handheld or 70-centimeter handhelds or mobile radios and just use the PTT. I mean, that's a wonderful way of combining those two. Use the data, the mesh side for the data, and the voice on VHF, UHF. VHF, UHF, you can do medium bandwidth, medium distance. Winlink is available, NBeams is available. They're both great software packages. You can do voice on FM, SSB, not a problem. And then of course you've got HF. And there you have lower bandwidth, but longer distance, and you don't need that line of sight. So there's a big advantage in having that. Winlink, NBeams are available on HF without any problems. Voice, you've got SSB, you can use AM. And of course, finally, you can use the internet, especially if you are Winlink enabled. So Winlink is multi-mode and cross-band. We really like that. Quick overview, I'm not going to go through everything here. Just the thing I want to point out is line of sight. VHF, UHF, you can kind of get away with it not being strict line of sight. Mesh, it has to be strict line of sight, and HF, you don't need line of sight at all. So that's a big plus right there. Keep in mind that cost is always an issue. So a good VHF, UHF station will run you about $500 to $700 by the time you have the antenna and the other systems involved, the battery and so on. But the other big advantage is, and mesh equipment is really low cost. You can pick up decent mesh equipment for $60, $70. So it's very easy for people to get involved in this. HF, costs are higher, but you get a lot of utility out of it as well. One of the big things I would like to impress on you is licenses. It's very easy to get people started on emergency communications with technician licenses, both in mesh and VHF, UHF. And what we have found in our group is we've had people come in with Baofangs, and I started a lot of my digital with a Baofang and, tried it out because I thought it was much easier to blow up a $30 radio than my preferred radios. But the thing is, we find that people come in, they have questions, and some of our best operators started that way. And what they realized very, very quickly is there is a lot more to this than they expected. And they go from exploring the VHF, UHF mesh realm very quickly to HF. I would say in our group, within about a year, year and a half, everybody is at least a general. So it's been a great entry into the hobby and into emergency communications. And again, the takeaway from this list is that there's an inverse relationship between throughput and distance that really makes a whole lot of sense. Voice, the way I speak right now is about 125 words per minute. If I have to speak slowly to actually pass traffic, that number would drop. And if I have to spell it out, then it will drop even more. Pactor 3, the distance, that we know works. It works to longer distance than that, but just a number here, 2200, that's coast to coast. And you get about 2,340 words per minute out of that. VARA HF, 7,263 words per minute. VARA FM narrow, 14,000 words per minute. So now you're talking quite a lot of data. VARA FM wide, 30,000 words per minute. And then of course mesh, you can have those 5 megabits at 6 million and at 50 minutes at 60 million words per minute. But you see at the same time on HF, you have that huge distance advantage. So you can actually send traffic, and that happened during the Mexico City earthquake, where stations from Mexico City used N5 TW station in Texas to actually pass traffic back and forth. So you do have that option to go outside of your area. Here's a great example of one of our recent peer-to-peer nets that Tom, KN6BKT, who was on the net tonight, led. And this was probably the height of efficiency of what we had. We had 8 stations on this net, and we handled 40 messages in 18 minutes. And those were check-in. So every station sent a check-in, an HSA, hospital status assessment, a burn resource, a burn DRC form, and a checkout, and they all received the exercise. 40 messages in 18 minutes, that is a lot, 5 messages per station. We would never be able to do this on voice. And I most definitely wouldn't be able to do it on CW, but just keep that in mind. This net went almost too well because nothing went wrong on this. And as I said before, I like it when things go wrong. It gives us something to work towards. But this was just perfectly handled across the board. So what's the key to all of this? And the answer is operators. We can talk about this technology, that technology, and this is better, that is better. It doesn't make a difference. The difference are the operators. The operators need to have skills, and they need to constantly practice. Because one, it helps them develop new skills. It helps them maintain and hone the existing skills they have. Winlink, N-beams, all of these things, they have a shelf life. If I go on vacation for 2 weeks and I come back and I haven't done any of this, it does take me a couple of days to get back into the rhythm. Have I turned my signal link on? Is the radio set to the right frequency? Am I on the right screen? And so on. So just keep that in mind. The more you practice, the better you'll be at this, just like all the other systems. Just because we do amateur radio doesn't make us great emergency communicators. Our served agencies are looking for something very specific. And the truth of the matter is, these days, they're looking for people who can handle incident command forms, hospital incident command system forms, and local forms that they have developed on their own. The other thing is, one of the things that we do is to experiment and advance technology. Our little group has contributed, just like Hawaii Aries, San Diego Aries, Washington Aries groups have, to the development of Winlink and made it hopefully more robust. Our reports come back and say, you know, this is working for us. Would you mind changing this? And again, the Winlink development team has been nothing but extraordinary in terms of helping us develop our capabilities, helping us address issues that we had. And that's just been a very fruitful cooperation. Secondly, equipment. Successful operators keep their equipment in top shape. You cannot expect your equipment to sit in a box for a year, and then when you need it, you bring it out and it all works. Your battery will probably be dead. You may have moved to a different radio, may not know how the old one works as well as you used to. So these things matter. You also want to try different configurations. Is the antenna that used to work still working? And plus, when you practice your Go kits regularly, you kind of understand that things may stop working. Maybe you need to update something. Again, the worst thing that can happen is that you come to a hospital, lives depend on you sending that traffic, and you can't because your coax cable is bad, your radio hasn't been updated with the most recent frequencies, etc., etc. These are not situations we want to be found in. And finally, teamwork. Successful operators always work in teams. So you want to develop and hone your operating procedures. You're never alone out there. You also want to troubleshoot as a team. One of the things that we do really well, I like to boast in this case, is that if anybody runs into an issue on a net, we try to solve it with them. And that's a very encouraging and supportive atmosphere. Now that we don't have to do this for life or death, it has to work, and we have the luxury of actually sending that in, trying this out. During the statewide medical health exercise is not the time to fix people's problems. At that point, we take the traffic from those stations that can send us the traffic because we can help them now. During an actual event, we will only focus on the people we can help, not the ones we can't. That's the reality of the situation. The other thing is you learn to trust one another. Amateur radio's power during Katrina, for instance, was that there were these teams of people who had a web of trust. You knew who you were talking to on the other side. And so we've looked very carefully at the experiences during Katrina. We've looked very carefully at Puerto Rico and the lessons to be learned from that. And we've incorporated a lot of this down into our operating practices. So for some of you who've lived through this, I want to thank you for actually reporting, sharing, and really doing this as a service to the community. We're all paying attention, and all the experiences that you've had are percolating throughout the community. Finally, it's relatively easy to do VHF on Winlink and cost effective. Most of you have this already at home: computer, radio antenna, coax battery, a sound card interface, or TNC if you want to do packet, but we generally recommend sound card interfaces. We use signal links simply because they existed in our community long before that, but there are others like RIM devices if you have an Alinco type system, or you can use the RA boards, and Joe can probably fill you in on that a little bit more. Winlink is free to use. If you want to get rid of the nag screen, I think the last time I checked was $28. The UC7HO sound modem is absolutely phenomenal. It's a free software package that combines with your sound card interface to create a packet station. And Vara FM, it's also free to use, twice as fast as Packet in the free version. $50 if you buy a group buy of 10 or more people, or $69 if you want to have the fast speeds unlocked. And that covers both your HF and your VHF, UHF, and that's consistently developed. So where do we go from here? We want to increase the Winlink footprint. We had 6 hospitals that used Winlink in 2019. That was 50% of the participating hospitals in the Aries LAX Northeast District. We had a little over 35 hospitals participating overall. About half the hospitals participated, but really only 6 of them used it. And again, they got all their traffic through, and they were all converts after that. We have 21 Northeast operators that have at least a functional knowledge, 11 of which are expert users. Like many other groups, we do have attrition. In our case, it's a lot of people who've lived in California for a long time, have very nice homes, and they're selling those homes and move to places where, you know, they've got more space and can put up those antenna towers that they've always wanted. So that's one of the challenges we have. And the other thing is our training workshops and exercises are a great success. We're reaching out all over the place. We've been working very closely with our friends in the High Desert District who've become Winlink capable within 3-4 months and are expanding their footprint. Served agencies love Winlink. We found that out after the statewide medical health exercise last year. The hospitals like the functionality and the workflow, and they like that they're dealing with known knowns. So they can go sit in front of an LA County form on Winlink now, and they can fill it out. And if they have a spreadsheet, they can fill it out, their spreadsheet, hand it over and send it. It de-stresses them during times of stress tremendously. And so they're big fans of this. They also like the HICS forms. That's just something they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So again, it's that familiarity that's been a big selling point. Give you an example, Pomona Valley Hospital DRC, and that they are a fantastic group. They've always had a big investment in amateur radio. They have a fantastic HF station out there. They have several VHF stations, and on the right here, the Mobile Hospital Command Center is actually their Mobile Hospital Command Center, where they have a whole kit that can run an incident command system out of this box. They have, I think, 4 radios in there, 1 dedicated to Winlink. They're thinking about putting a portable gateway in there. They've been absolutely phenomenal to work with. And they actually want all of their hospitals and clinics attached to them as a disaster resource center to be Winlink capable by the end of 2020. And we're happy to help them achieve that. There are challenges ahead for Aries LAX. One is we need to find a workable solution for High Desert District. They're separated from the other districts by an enormous mountain range. And people keep forgetting there are mountains here. You cannot see them on a lot of the movies simply because there's usually a layer of dust in the air, but they are extremely high. 5,000–6,000 feet are not unheard of in our neighborhood. So we need to find a way that they can talk with us simplex, and we're exploring these options and working on these this summer. HF is definitely on one of the things we're looking at, and maybe add some digipeaters for Winlink and so on. So we're exploring different ideas together. It has to be a solution we can all live with, and that's affordable and robust. We'll bring us back to that point. For Northeast, we have to step up our quick deployment HF game. We do HF, and we reach out to gateways all over and test them, but we need to get better at deploying that quickly. Our goal for a VHF station is operational in under 10 minutes, and for HF, it would have to add another 10 minutes, but not longer than that, because the faster we're online, the faster our hospitals receive the resources they need and the support they need from the county. Understand everything we do in order to support our served agencies and by extension, our community. It's not theoretical for us, very simply put, because those hospitals will be hosting but we'll be taking care of our family members, our wives, our children, our parents, our cousins, brothers, sisters, our neighbors, our friends. And I always tell our people, you want to have the best trained operator at that hospital. You don't want somebody who just walked off the street and said, hey, I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, and that's why I can do this. You want somebody who says, I'm taking this seriously, and I'm doing this in service to my community. And then the other thing, we want to gain greater acceptance for Winlink among the other districts. Again, High Desert has been working very closely. Northwest is becoming involved in Winlink, and I know South is looking into it. And again, we're a resource for everybody, and we're happy to reach out. We've been working very closely with our friends in San Diego, and a big shout out to them, to all the great work they've been doing. San Diego has been essentially Winlinking all their major 911 receiving hospitals very successfully. I know our friends in Washington State have been using Winlink very successfully to support EOCs. Oregon, same thing, EOCs, hospital supports. And our friends in Northern California, Sacramento Valley, Aries, and so on, they've been working absolutely tirelessly to make this work. And last but not least, Hawaii has been one of those shining beacons in Winlink development and thinking about things creatively. Like us, they are dealing with mountains, and instead of valleys, they have ocean in between, but so it's a very similar environment to operate in. And this has been one of the most wonderful things about this process and this journey, to work together with people who are solving common problems and looking at it from different perspectives. And that's what enriches our community. And finally, there are tons of resources on Winlink, and please feel free to reach out. My email is K6OLI@ARRL.net. That's Kilo 6 Oscar Lima India at Alpha Romeo Romeo Lima.net, November Echo Tango. So please reach out. We're happy to work with you. We have a weekly Winlink exercise. If you're on Winlink, send Jeff W2JCL in the to field. All you have to do is type W2JCL an email, and I'm sure he'll be happy to add you to the exercise. You can complete that at your leisure. If you don't complete it, again, there's no, we don't grade people. We do provide feedback. So if there's things that we say, look at this, look at that, you can certainly always opt out of the feedback, but we do that. And they come out usually every Sunday. So a whole lot of fun. We have Winlink how-to quick guides, VARA FM and Packet. You'll be up and running if you have a signal link at home and a 2-meter 440 or dual band rig. You can be up and running under 10 minutes. So it works really well. We've had great feedback on those. They're available in the Winlink Book of Knowledge. And finally, I would like to impress upon you, and I'm happy for Dave to add some to this, the San Diego Aries Winlink video series, Winlink short clips there, and we can provide you with those links in a list as well afterwards. They're great short clips that walk you through it step by step by step. Understand that we get that sometimes it's difficult for people to admit when they don't know. The beauty of it for me is I know I don't know, and I always know that I don't know. So asking is for me a very natural way of doing things. Understand that it's absolutely encouraged to ask questions. This is what the hobby is about: mentoring, helping each other, being friends, and developing these relationships. And if I don't know the question, maybe Jeff does. And if we don't know, we can point you towards somebody who knows that question. The strength of the amateur radio community is that it is a community and you can reach out. So part of our development is always ask. If you don't know, ask. If you're in doubt, ask. If you think you know and you're not sure, ask. And if you have something that you say, let's try this out, say that. Again, Mike, who's an excellent operator, he said, why don't we do everything digitally? I said, okay, go ahead, lead that net exactly the way you envision it. We did that for 10 minutes and he called it. He said, no, this is just not working. Let's do the voice part because the tactical communications on voice works. and then we do the traffic digitally. And he had that idea, he stepped up to the plate and he ran it, and it was just like a scientific experiment. It's like, okay, it was much more efficient the way we did it with voice, and that's a great test. And we will go back to trying that. Maybe we've gained more experience, we could try it, and maybe we'll learn the lesson that, you know, we go back. And with that, here are a couple of more links and resources. Winlink for MCOM is a great Google group. I strongly encourage you to go in there and ask people questions. There's a Winlink program group if you want to learn more about Winlink, how to set it up with your specific rig, especially on HF. Great resource forum. And of course, the Book of Knowledge has a ton of information, including the San Diego Aries information. So with that, I would like to thank you from all of us at Aries LAX, and I'm open for questions. So please don't hesitate. As I said, you know, anything I can answer and anything I don't know, I'll look up for you.
Okay, I'm going to drop your screen here.
Yeah.
Okay, super. Thank you. Jeff, W2JCL, some of the things that you were talking about having him send out to everybody, send them to me and I will put it into a message that goes out to everybody is here. Any documentation, stuff like that, that will save a lot of people asking for it. We'll just give it to everybody. So if you guys can do that, send it to me, K7REX@ARRL.org or net, whatever. I appreciate that. I got several questions over here. Where do we post this? I understand there's new people here, especially on the Aries side. I will, as soon as I can, this is over with, it's going to be a big file, but I got to get set up and then I'll get it posted. I'll get links out to everybody that's here or everybody's been involved here. You know, welcome to share it. There's a lot of good information. Man, do I appreciate this. This has been a great presentation.
Thank you.
Is there any questions? Let's open this up. Unmute yourselves and then mute yourself if you're not talking. So
I do have a quick question for Oliver.
okay,
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, Oliver. I'm Stephen Keller. I'm the Assistant Section Emergency Coordinator for Maryland, DC. And we're starting to dabble a little bit into shares. Now, do you folks use any of the licenses over there so you're off the ham and you can use encrypted stuff and things like that?
Well, I actually had that conversation today via email. On the LA County level, at this point, there's very little awareness by the served agencies of share, and I don't think they're really looking into that. However, on the state level, there's great interest, and they've been pushing shares dramatically. So for us right now, it is part of our 5-year project to make us shares, but we will have to do quite a bit of advocacy within the county structure to get that up and running. But again, Cal OES, the Office of Emergency Services for the state of California, is a big fan of shares, and they're using that very, very actively.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Oliver. I mean, it just seems to be very attractive because you don't need a license. You can do encrypted stuff and things like that. And I've been in contact with one of the Winlink developer guys over this, and that's one of the things he was suggesting to solve some hospital problems. Thank you very much.
One of the words of suggestion that I have there with the encryption, and please keep that in mind. One, HIPAA does not force hospitals to do encryption. They like it, and there needs to be some form of privacy, but in emergencies, they usually are issuing statements on the Department of Health Services, and this is the National Department of Health Services website, that lives come before HIPAA regulations, always. So the well-being of the patient needs to be prioritized. Please keep that in mind. And also, if you're working with hospitals, bring the legal team in at some point, or ask your liaison to clear that. All our hospitals that are using Winlink actually brought in their legal teams early on and said, okay, at what point can we justify that? So they actually have a policy, they wrote a policy and said, at this point, amateur radio can send it. So I fully understand your concerns, but the other thing is, amateur radio, you get to practice a lot more than shares because not a lot of people have that equipment. So keep that in mind. The true power of amateur radio is that we can put a lot of boots on the ground very quickly. But yeah, thank you. Great comment there.
Okay, Diana, did you have a question? Hang on, Diana.
I have.
Okay, go ahead. What? I have you muted.
Okay, I was just going to make a comment that shares is being used by the hams or a number of hams who are in the Sheriff's Department disaster radio group. And I conflict of interest, I've been the training officer for that group since 2015. But the Sheriff's Department does have a number of shares licenses, and we do have a number of hams who've been trained in using these ARES Manpack radios and Barrett HF radios that are capable of encryption also, and they can use the shares frequencies when authorized and instructed to do so. But at this point, Aries is not involved with shares in Los Angeles County. Over, back to Net.
Okay, thank you very much, Diana. Anybody else got a question here? Unmute yourself and make yourself known.
I have a question, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, the one that said that I have a question, Dan, you were first. Go ahead.
Oh, Daryl, KT4WX. Question for Oliver from A.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I'm on a satellite internet connection. The latency kills me sometimes. Do you know anybody out there that's running Winlink 2K using a Raspberry Pi and a TNC Pi? And what success or failures have they had? You know anyone, or maybe multiple numbers of people that are running it?
Yes, they actually are. Gary W6GSW, who kind of initiated our, and was my predecessor as a DAC, he initiated the Winlink capabilities here, and so he added Pis to both one of our hospital gateways and his personal gateway, and they work. We've gone back to using Windows machines because you can pick up a Windows computer these days on, I don't want to say Amazon, but Amazon, for $109. One of those fanless PCs. And the advantage of doing it that way is you can use VARA and VARA FM plus tri-mode, and Winlink is kind of built for that. So you can use BPQ32 on a Raspberry Pi. You'll have to learn it. It's a brilliant piece of software. It's great to use. It's very robust, but we have found it's actually easier to run it on Windows, simple Windows computers, and much more intuitive.
I might make a comment
Yeah,
here. Go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
You go ahead and finish, and I'll comment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was wondering because the consumption on a Pi would be very, very low. And I'd even thought about using a Raspberry Pi Zero and building it for myself, and then other people could copy it. But it would have a lot less current consumption. Therefore, you could run on battery power for a lot longer. That was my thought behind maybe using a Pi Zero or a Pi 2 or something like that.
The PC I have over there is running on 1 amp. I mean, it's drawing 1 amp, so it's not a super big. Again, there are no moving parts in there. It's an eMMC in this. And it runs the full version of Windows 10, 64 gigs, and of drive space, eMMC space, and 4 gigs RAM. So plenty of oomph. And again, I appreciate the power that the Pis bring, but I feel very comfortable with the way we're set up, again, because we add a lot of functionality that way.
At this point, I will comment. Shortly after this is over with, I will have a groups IO set up for everybody that's here. You can share your ideas and discuss this stuff, get everything going here. I'll send out a link to that as soon as I get it set up. And Oliver, I might comment to what you commented earlier. It's not the equipment, it's the individual, it's the operator. So on that behalf, I like to say, if you're very comfortable and your thing is building something out of whatever, and it does the same thing, if it can communicate with those that's using the computer, that's what amateur radio is about. So go ahead. So anybody else got a comment?
Yeah, W7CIA.
Go ahead there, Ray.
Hi, Dan and Oliver. Thanks for the great presentation. I got a couple of comments. The subject of encryption came up on the Shares Interoperability Working Group last month, where there was a presentation on their encryption scheme, but they discussed HIPAA, and I'll just give a quick overview here that they indicated that for emergency communications, that HIPAA actually has an exclusion for radio communication, at least for within shares. I don't know that the amateur radio regulations can be violated. But they said also that healthcare providers are subject to HIPAA. They can provide the data pre-encrypted to the radio operators who can send it over shares, and then it can be decrypted by the served agency on the other end. That was one comment I had, but the question I have is, do you have any information on which Winlink modems perform best in a high multipath environment on VHF and UHF?
You know, we've been working with a couple of modes. In terms of packet, AX25 is kind of the old fashioned, but if you have a high multipath, multi-mode system, I would probably recommend using the FX25 version of sound modem, because that was actually developed to send traffic via satellites. So you're dealing with you know, something trundling in space, and it's, if you want to have the copy, it's still in the beta version, but if you want to have a copy of that, I'm happy to give that to you. We've had great success with VARA no matter what happens, over long distances, short distances, and I'm sure that that others in this group have experimented with this in a similar fashion. So again, it's a development system. Packet and VARA FM are pretty much your main go-to options. The other thing you could do, you can always use packet on VHF, UHF too. You're not restricted to HF on that. So if you really want to go out that way, but you know, we've had no issues, and we live in a high RF environment in Los Angeles. We've had no issues with VARA and no issues with packet, both the FX25 and AX25.
Okay, thank you. Just a final comment. We've done a little bit of experimenting in our area here on simplex, and RDOP does not seem to work well in a multipath environment. The Winmore modem seems to be pretty good, but it's challenging. So anyway, thank you very much for the presentation and for your comments.
Again, give VARA a try, and you know, try that out on VHF, UHF. Winmore and RDOP tend to be a little bit slower on that, and we experimented early on with both of them, but we found that VARA was by far the go-to. When we started with VARA, pretty much nobody was using it about 1.5 years ago, and now it's at the point where our nets, I have to ask people to switch to packet in order to actually do some practice on that. So just understand technology. People's preferences change with the technology, and as Dan said, it's the operators that make those decisions.
Roger. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, hey, Oliver, have you done any head-to-head comparisons with Pactor and VARA and seen, is there a remarked distance and speed?
No, I have not personally. Martin HB9 AUR has a brilliant article doing these comparisons on a Swiss equivalent of QST. And I'm happy to forward that to you. It's in German, but I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. And he has been a big fan of Pactor for a long time. And unlike a lot of other, unlike us in the US, he doesn't need a special dispensation by the FCC to use Pactor 4, right? Being in Switzerland. So, and he is a huge fan. He actually was the person who turned me on to VARA and VARA FM. And the development has now moved on VARA so much that it outperforms Pactor in all but the noisiest situations. And there's good data on that out there. It's a great question.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And the price is right too when you configure an SCS modem. Thanks for what you did. Great presentation.
$50 is a good deal.
I have a question for
Still
Oliver.
have a question, Dan.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can I ask my question?
Okay, Kim, you tried earlier, so go ahead, and we'll
Yeah,
pick
I've
up the
been
other one.
trying. Okay, this is a question to Oliver. First of all, Oliver, thank you very much for permitting some of the Hawaii hams to participate in the weekly exercise. And thanks to Joe Speroni, who was on this conference, he was able to get RA25 and DRA 30 cards for Vera FM and for Vera HF. Have you folks in your group using those cards, or using basically other forms of cards for Vera FM especially?
Well, to my knowledge, I'm the only one who's played with RA boards. I see the value of them for people who run gateways. What we have found, and this is experimenting with friends of mine, one of them who happens to be an RF engineer, the setup tends to be a little bit iffier. We found that for field operations, the signal links give us the largest number of options. Yes, we can only use the narrow mode, but it's only it's half as fast as the wide mode. And we have experimented with wide mode with our IC7100s, and we were underwhelmed in its performance given our high RF environment. So sticking with narrow mode and signal links to us hasn't been a detriment, if that makes sense. For our next gateways, we will definitely use our 8 boards for the gateways, but I'll continue using my signal links. So I think the development of the RA boards has been brilliant. They're a great piece of kit for everybody. I highly recommend them, just like the RIM 50. Those are great little items. I actually have some of them here. I can show you if you're interested. But it's the work that Hawaii Aries has done to move digital communications forward has been just absolutely phenomenal. And again, we do a lot of N-beams. It's a little bit more involved to set up the RA boards for N-beams. And as we are an organization as Aries, we want to be interoperable with our friends from DCS, who are an FLDG N-beams oriented group. We found that sticking to the signal links right now has been okay with us. But again, Hawaii Aries, the RA boards, Washington Aries, the same thing. The RA boards have been a big boon in that area.
Any more questions?
Thank you, Oliver.
Yes,
Go ahead, Robert.
thank you. Going back to the presentation, and this is probably going to be Oliver and Diana. I don't suppose there's anything public as far as the legal finding related to HIPAA that we might be able to share with our friends in the medical industry in Illinois, would there be?
Well, if I may just tell you what the take of LA County EMS agency is. As far as they're concerned, and again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm in finance, but as far as they're concerned, Aries is immune from HIPAA because we're just the conduit. We don't initiate any of this traffic. The hospital initiates the traffic and they have to make the decision on HIPAA. The MAC, or the county in this respect, is the recipient or the initiator of the same traffic. They have to be concerned with this. We essentially are Verizon. Whether people sent this through Verizon or not, it's just very difficult to figure that out. But just keep in mind, we're conduit, that's all we are. Just like the postal service, if somebody steals the mail and gets the information that way, is the postal service liable? No, they're conduit. That's the way it is.
I like the answer, Oliver. I can tell you that I sometimes think I don't live in the land of Lincoln. I live in the land of lawyers. So you make perfect sense. But then again, as you said, you're not an attorney and neither am I. So to Diana, because you mentioned shares, I'll ask you the question. One of the things we have here in Central Division and certainly in Illinois, we seem to have resource conflicts where there's a great deal of amateur radio enthusiasts, if you will, that are interested in emergency communication, which basically means not only are they at Aries, but they are also serving in an Oxcom role with the state or with the county EMAs. Plus, they're also supporting the Strategic Technology Reserve, which is one of our interesting things we do in Illinois. So you find out that you may be looking for 30 people to do something, and they are double and triple committed. Have you seen that in your section?
Wait a minute, Diane. Okay, whoops, there you go.
Okay. We have a similar situation here in LA County. There were some agencies that wanted people to belong only to them and not to any other group. That doesn't work so well, believe it or not. In the Sheriff's Radio Group, we actually encourage all of our members to belong to their city radio group or ARES or the Red Cross Radio Group. And the reason for that is that it helps promote interoperability between the various groups because we all have a common stake in it as opposed to operating within our own silo. But to the point, you're absolutely right. In the actual crisis, every one of these organizations may find out they have far fewer members available at that point in time than they thought initially. But here in LA County, we expect that when the major earthquake strikes, a number of operators in any of the groups will be either at work, can't get home, somewhere. And so everyone has to learn how to operate with the least amount of operators and be prepared for operating 24/7 over an extended period of time. By the time the event is over, everyone will have operated, but we don't need everybody at once up front. We can all get by with a dedicated cadre, and then over the next week, everyone will step up as they have their availability. Back to you.
Thank you very much. And Dan, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask an informal poll really quickly. One of the members of the ARRL Band Plan Committee is our the Central Division Director, Kermit Carlson, and he and I have been talking about a couple of ideas. Would anyone on this call have a significant heartburn if the league requested the commission at least consider the idea of a subband on the HF and each HF band where data and voice would be allowed, so that we could do what we do so very well? I agree, Oliver, it works extremely well when you're doing the same frequency for voice and data. Is there anyone on this call that would really have any heartburn about that? There you go. Joe.
Yeah. I guess most people know that Hawaii and Puerto Rico, Alaska already have a segment on 40 meters from 7075 to 7100, which allows both voice and data. And recently, because of band conditions, our nets have had to QSY to 80 meters, and we don't have that privilege on 80 meters. So we've requested it. The ARRL band plan has looked at I think they have looked at our requirements and seem to be supportive of it, at least for, but not in the 48 states, just for the territories outside. We do need the low bands 40, 80, and even 160 for inter-island communications. So trying to run a Winlink net on HF when you have to have the digital and voice on different frequencies is a problem going forward.
Well, certainly our sets that we operate on 80 meters, even inside the state of Illinois, is a drag when not only do you have a different radio, you have a different antenna, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I'm going to keep pushing that. I don't see anybody throwing their hands up and their hair on fire saying, no, 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 let's not do that. I mean, I didn't ask for Pactor 4, so that was a joke. Thank you, Dan. I'll keep going.
Okay, again, okay, Diane wants to say something. Go ahead, Diane. Diana?
No, I'm sorry, I had nothing.
Oh, okay, looked like you were getting ready to tell us something.
I want to say something, Dan.
Okay, Oscar, go for it.
Yeah, guys, good evening. Oscar, KP4 Radio Fox from Puerto Rico. Actually, I'm very active during the Maria hurricane. I will tell you something, and please don't take me wrong, and doesn't sound to be arrogant at all. But during the emergency and crisis, when we're taking in our hands the communication for emergency communication that save lives, I would do whatever is necessary on the band and having voice and data in any band during that moment of crisis. I would myself, I did present it to the FCC here that they were locally at the GFO, and they said, you do whatever you need to do to keep the communications going. So definitely, you know that the rules and regulations, if it's a real emergency, you don't need permission to do it. You just do it, make it happen, work, and get it done.
I absolutely agree, Oscar. And for you, anything you need, brother man, you did a great job out there. But I'm talking more like more drills. We could probably just do anything we want even now, but it's the drills. It's to get the muscle memory. It's to get people trained up. And so I'll keep pushing down that road and see if we can do this on a daily basis. Thanks again, Oscar, for all you do.
I have to agree with Robert in the sense that what we can do in these disasters, most of the time when a disaster hits us, they pretty well let us do what we need to do to make it work. But we're having to reinvent the wheel sometimes if we haven't been testing that equipment out, use it and so forth. So it'd be nice to get some of that stuff where we can drill with it as well. Is there anybody else?
Dan?
Yes, go ahead.
Hey, it's Ray, W7CIA. I just want to make another comment on shares. People might not be aware, but for shares to activate, there has to be a federal disaster declaration that comes down from the executive branch. And so that can happen well into an emergency. And Aries has the opportunity to step in before that happens. So you know, don't think that shares is the end all to beat all here. It has its limitations.
Okay, I'd like to remind everybody again that as soon as I can get it set up, I hope to have it set tonight. I will have a group. I will send you a link. You can all be a part of that, ask the questions, share documents, et cetera, et cetera. I'll get that going. I should have it going tonight. I see where your comments about sending me documents. When I send out the email with the video link to this video tonight, I will also include those documents. Any other questions? I can't believe I have a quiet bunch like this.
Well, if you like to get to section manager business, we're happy to bow out at this point. You know, again, I would like to say it was an absolute privilege talking with you tonight, and thank you so much for the comments. We always appreciate that. And also thank you so much for what you're doing for the ARRL, for the membership, and for the country and the community. We really, really appreciate it. All volunteers, and your actions are not going unnoticed and unappreciated. We may not always say it via email, but let me say it on behalf of ARES LAX, especially the Northeast District. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, I think what we're all doing is the same thing. We're trying to enjoy our hobby, help others, share with others, move it forward. Together we can do a lot. Individually, all we can do is complain. So I really appreciate everybody's attending this meeting, and those that attend these other things that help us do that. Is there anything else? Boy, I can't believe a bunch of hams don't talk. This is unheard of. All right. If that's the case, then I'm going to bring this thing to a close tonight so I can get busy setting up these groups and getting this link out and all that for you guys tonight. Appreciate you all showing up. Oliver, it was a terrific presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. To Tom and Jeff also in there, I want to thank you guys. And there will be more of these kind of deals, and you'll all be invited. All right, with that, I'm going to say 73s, everybody, unless somebody wants to say something more. Okay, some of you 73s, everybody, and have a good evening. Stay safe.
So long.